right, welcome to Make the Game. My name is Matt Hackett. You might know me as the author of How to Make a Video Game All by Yourself. This is going to be a fun episode. I've got three main topics that I want to talk about today, although if you've listened to the podcast before, you might know that I might get off on tangents. But the main topics are GDC, especially GDC 2024, which is the one I will be attending next week. I want to rant about no stacking, and I'll explain what that means, but it's kind of like a life philosophical rule I've adopted recently, a new philosophy on how to approach life, and I think it's applicable to lots of creative endeavors, especially making games and writing books, which are some of the things that I do and you might be doing as well. And then lastly, I want to talk about setting goals and a system called the SMART system, which helps you set good goals that are achievable. So those are the three topics I want to talk about today. Let's jump in.
You're listening to Make the Game with Matt Hackett.
So right off the bat, GDC, I will be attending this week. I know some of you are listening to this podcast in the future, and that's fine, and maybe GDC is long come and gone, that's okay. But if you'll be attending GDC 2024, especially Wednesday through Friday, hit me up. This will be my 10th GDC, I believe. It's kind of hard to keep track over time. And I've kind of gone in every context you can imagine, except for being a speaker. I really dropped the ball. It was literally on my list. The thing that always happens is I hear the notice that the call for submission, for speaker submissions is over. That's the event that I get. I haven't subscribed to the right things. It's always like way earlier than you expect too. It's like August. The conference happens every year in San Francisco in March, and it'll be like August 8th, and I'll hear, well, call for submissions are over, you missed your chance. I'm like, what? So you've really got, honestly, I think around March, when the conference is going on, is probably the time to be preparing your talk and getting ready to submit for when they open, like April or May or something. But I dropped the ball. I had some talks prepared, some things I want to talk about, like especially around indie game development, content marketing, just some of the stuff that I do, solo development. I want to write a talk and do a talk about my book, How to Make a Video Game All by Yourself, but I feel like it'd probably be a little too on the nose, a little too self-serving, just a hour-long ad for my book. I don't think that's particularly cool. I sort of did that. I actually just uploaded this video on my YouTube channel on Valadria, how to make a web game all by yourself, which I think is good enough, especially for the context for that was I co-hosted JS Game Dev Summit 2023, and they also asked me to give a talk, and that was kind of one way I thought I could, get a little book promo in there, but also just have a good starting point for giving a talk, because I hadn't given a talk like that in that context ever at a conference, I don't think. So kind of putting my talk on rails, using my book as a template really helped me get it done. But I've attended GDC before with a full pass purchased for me by a company, which I think that's the way to do it if you can manage that at all. You just get a full ride. You kind of get the whole week off of work. You get a pass paid for, and hopefully you can even expense your meals and your travel and your lodging and everything. And I've done it that way like once, maybe twice. That's the way to do it if you can pull it off. I've gone out of pocket where I paid if you get a ticket early, it's like $1,500 and you just pay for your own travel and everything. And all said, it was probably about $2,000 for the week, minus if you're independent, whatever work that cost you, that can be a factor that can add up. I've also gone to GDC where you don't even get a pass. You just show up and you just hang out with friends. You just get meals. You go to after parties. That's a solid way to do it. That can cost you $0 or just whatever the travel and lodging and meals and whatever else is going to cost you. I mean, honestly, you can go to GDC and just hang out at Yerba Buena Gardens, right? Like there's always developers there, and if you're not too shy, you can just walk up and say hello. You can just look for anyone that has the badge on, and if you didn't get a pass, you won't have the badge on, but you can bring your own cards, you can introduce yourself, and GDC is one of those times where even us developers who are known for being really shy are kind of more social and receptive to that kind of thing than normal. So it's worth taking advantage of. I've made a lot of friends that way. This year's a little unusual for me because I'm going out of pocket and I just purchased the Expo Pass. I bought it nice and early. I think it was like $200, and it's Wednesday through Friday. So the first 2 days, there are a bunch of talks and stuff, which I won't be attending. Every single night, there's parties, after parties, mixers, events like that you can go to if you want to. I've already got a bunch of stuff on my calendar. There are like expo floor mixers, there's expo floor events. I've scheduled some time with some friends. If I was really trying to hit the pavement hard, I would probably be pitching my game Pixel Washer even harder, but I feel like I've kind of come out the other end of that. I've had several pitches recently. Obviously my game is not funded, so I mean, if I learned a lot and my pitch is much stronger now, and in the future I'll probably have much stronger pitches. So, you know, maybe this time next year I'll have a game that's worth funding or something. But I'm not looking to aggressively pitch Pixel Washer, although I am thinking about bringing the build that I have on Steam Deck with me, just so I could put it in people's hands and be like, here's the game, you want to play it right now? Because it is, I mean, it's one of those games you can just pick up and just start playing, right? And it's running beautifully on my Steam Deck, so why not? So this year, for GDC 2024, I'll be attending in kind of like a very low budget indie style. I bet when it's all said and done, the whole thing will cost under $1,000. Pretty reasonable if you make good use of it. And sometimes just the experience itself is worth having. My wife and I have not been traveling nearly as much as we used to, and sometimes I kind of get cabin fever. So, you know, it should be fun. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because I'm sure I'll be talking about how it went in the future. I have planned, I want to do like a GDC tips or like a postmortem. I love doing a postmortem for anything at all, right? A postmortem for how your Tuesday went. But for this one, I want to do like, you know, everybody does like the GDC, how my GDC went. I see lots of that kind of thing, but mine could be slanted towards like GDC on a budget or just the expo for GDC. And I think that could give it, you know, I'm big into a niche within a niche. That's one of the things I recommend. Like that's one of the reasons I think my book has recently sold just over 7,000 copies, which I'm seriously proud of. But it's not just a niche, which is game development. It's a niche within a niche, which is solo game development. And I think that's one of the reasons that the book has been relatively popular. And so, yeah, be sure to subscribe to either the podcast or my YouTube channel if you want to know more about like attending GDC on a budget or just the expo floor stuff. And if you're listening to this podcast during or before GDC, hit me up if you would like to meet up. I'll be around. Okay, now I want to talk about no stacking, which is kind of one of my new philosophies that I'm really into. So my wife and I, every year, we go to a Ren Fair. We love Ren Fairs. We've been to a bunch of different ones. We went to one in San Diego not that long ago. But our favorite one is called the Pleasure Renaissance Fair in the Los Angeles area. And it's not what it sounds like. They just call it that because it's like a ye old thing. You know, the pleasure being you just go and watch jousts and you drink beer and you talk with friends and you eat a turkey leg. And we don't always, recent years we do. We dress up. You don't have to dress up. You can just look like I do. This is how I will look at GDC. So if you see this person, be sure to say hi. If you have a book, bring it. I would love to sign it. But so we were at the Ren Fair a few years ago. And okay, so picture this in your mind. Everybody's wearing a costume. We all look like pirates or just a Ren Fair attendees, you know, fancy dresses. We all look like peasants or knights or wizards or whatever. And everybody needs cash because not every you want to get food, you want to get drinks, you want to get turkey legs, you want to get kettle corn, whatever. And not everywhere supports credit cards, right? They don't accept credit cards. And so you want to have cash on hand. And the ATMs or automatic teller machines are pretty limited, right? So there was this one specific place over by where you get food where there were these two lines, okay? So picture two ATMs right next to each other, and there were these kind of like wooden posts and stuff, like ye old wooden posts, kind of separating the two lines between the two ATMs. So the ATM on the left had this huge line, and we expected huge lines. We were like, okay, it's ATMs, there's lines everywhere. So the ATM on the left has a big line. The ATM on the right has no line, okay? And we did what everybody was doing. We snapped to grid, right? We got in that first line that was going to take 20 minutes. I mean, it really depends on how, you know, sometimes people go up to the ATM and they breeze through it. Sometimes they go up to the ATM and they struggle and you're going to be waiting a while. So 20, 30 minutes was at least the wait. And that's like I don't know, that's valuable time. You might miss the joust. That's time where you want to be chatting with your friends. You want to just be chilling. Like, you're at the Ren Fair for pleasure. You're there to have a good time. You're there to enjoy yourself. And very few people, your idea of a good time is waiting in line. And so that's valuable time that it's costing you. And so the line on the right, there was no line on the right. Everybody just assumed the ATM on the right was broken, out of service. Very common for an ATM, no problem. Maybe it's out of cash, maybe the system is down. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with something as complicated as an ATM. So then at one point, this like tall elven woman in costume walked up to the ATM and used it and left. And, you know, we're all probably a bunch of nerds. We're at a Ren Fair. We're all a little shy. I'm kind of naturally just sort of a shy person, relatively. And we all watch that happen. Nobody reacts. No one's even like asking her, oh, hey, did that work? Because I think they all assumed, and it's hard for us to see, right? Visibility's low and the line is long and it's bright and sunny outside. And she was very quick, so it was hard to tell if she walked up and just like, oh, this isn't working, and just left, or walked up and got her cash and left, right? So, probably because I had a couple of meads in me already. That's honey wine. I was like, screw this. I got out of the stack, the line, and I walked up to the ATM, and it worked fine. It worked fine. And, you know, it's interesting. There was this kind of social anxiety of, like, these are my peers. These are people who I might be friends with some of these people in costume. I just don't recognize them right now. They're definitely people who are nearby and able to yell, and at a Ren Fair, that's a common thing. And you might feel like you're cutting in line, right? Because that's a common thing, like at a grocery store or something. You know, if a new lane opens up, what they often do is they pull people who would be up next. You don't pull people from the back of the line. You pull people who would be up next to the new line that opens at a grocery store. And it also comes with some cost, like you leave your place in line. There were people behind us. And so if I go and I leave, I walk past people and maybe I feel like I'm cutting and someone's like, hey, what are you doing? What's this pirate doing? How dare you cut in line? But the thing is no one was using that line. So we got out of line. We walked up to the ATM with no line at all. Used it, worked fine. Nothing, no problems. It had cash. It was in service. We got our money. And on the way out, we have to walk past all these goblins and pirates and peasants and knights and warriors. And I was like, it's working fine. Like, use it, right? And very few people did. There's this psychological effect I think people have where you just want to stack. You want to get in line. You feel safe in the line. You feel comfortable in the line. You know what I mean? And you might have heard this before, but like sometimes you've got to push yourself out of your comfort zone to succeed. You know, if you're always doing the same thing and it's not working, if you're way too comfortable every day and you want to get further ahead in life, that's one of the ways to do it, is to break yourself out of that bubble. And so the rest of the day, I was just kind of like in mild shock. It just seems like such a small thing. I think it was just the events and the drinking and the sun, who knows. But the rest of the day, it was just on my mind. I was like, I can't believe that it wasn't just me waiting in line. And I didn't do it immediately. Like the elf went and got her cash and then left. And there's some time, like some minutes passed, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to wait in this line. I don't care. I had to push past. I don't care if people heckle me. I don't care if I upset some, 6.5 foot tall warrior with a sword. I'm going to go find out if the ATM works. And so you have to kind of push past that stuff. You get out of your comfort zone. I went and I did that, and we got our cash, and we went and we got drinks and turkey legs, and we went to a joust, and it was great. And at least for the next 20 minutes, I was just, I can't believe we would still be in line right now. We might still be in line. And seeing that like almost nobody got out of line, like you would think that once someone went to that ATM, you'd think the line would just split in half. Oh, people get it now. You're like chopping down a tree. Boom, they're right in half now. Half are in the line that everyone else was in, and now half of them are like, oh, okay, we get it. Let's all get into that ATM line that's obviously working. There's no reason to just, I don't know what this ATM had going against it, but no one wanted to get in that line. That didn't really happen. There was that psychological urge for everybody just to stay where they were. And the rest of the day, it was on my mind. And I feel like this was maybe 2 years ago at the Ren Fair. And it's kind of affected my, if not daily, then weekly life. Another great example is when you're driving. So I'm guessing most people, maybe you don't have your driver's license yet or whatever, but you've probably been in a car and you've seen this pattern happen. Say you're in like a 3-lane road or a 5-lane road or something, right? And you'll see like maybe the left lane's a turn lane, maybe the right lane's a turn lane, but there's at least 3 lanes in the middle. And the middle lane will have like 6 cars at a red light, right? So you approach a red light, everybody slows down, and then the middle lane is pretty stacked up. And then the left lane will have like maybe 1 or 2 cars in it. And then a lot of times the right lane has nobody in it. And again, maybe it's a turn lane. That's a different story. I'm talking about everybody just wants to go straight. This is another example of stacking. And this is something that I do use on an almost daily basis, is the no stacking philosophy hits me. And I'm like, by default, it's just comfortable. I'm just going to stay in my lane. I'm just going to go straight. I'm going to be the 7th car in line to go straight. But then just with the little effort it takes, put on my turn signal, change lanes. Now I'm first in line. And the light turns green, and I'm very responsive when I drive. I just go fast. I want to go the speed limit. I want to get there as fast as possible. I breeze past 6 cars. I get home, maybe it doesn't matter, 30 seconds earlier. Who knows? Sometimes it adds up. You do that 10 times on like a road trip or something. You might get where you're going 10 minutes earlier. That might be the reason you avoid an accident or bad weather, or the reason you get home earlier to get a package delivery or something. It's like, you know, let's not talk about the butterfly effect and what all that could mean, but the point being that like it gets you ahead in life at that moment, which is good. So hopefully this makes sense. The kind of no stacking philosophy, right, is don't just get in the line that's most immediate. The last example I'll give is grocery stores, but I see this a lot because I do all the grocery shopping in my household, and you'll often see like whichever, you know, grocery checkout lane is closest to the door will have like a line that even sometimes wraps like around some merchandise or something. And if you go a little bit farther down, you'll see a lane that has like 1 person in it or just completely empty, and the cashier's just kind of like bored, right? Another great example. But let's apply this no stacking philosophy to game development, because that's how I think about everything. So let's look at Steam genres, right? You'll see like maybe roguelikes are crazy popular, especially among indies for lots of reasons. You get lots of replayability. You don't need a ton of content, and the content you do adds a lot to the game. You might see a genre that's really popular, like Survivors genres. I've talked about maybe making a Survivors game, like my game Witchmore. Maybe I will turn it into a Survivors game, something like that. But what that is it's tempting to go after what's popular, but a lot of times what you're really doing is you're stacking. And sometimes you do want to go where the excitement is. You want to do a fast follow, hopefully, or maybe even a slow follow to kind of go where the excitement is and kind of benefit from that success. But sometimes you're just getting in line. And, you know, I get this comparison a lot, is that everybody loves to make a game like Diablo. But the question is like, why wouldn't I just go play Diablo? Or if you're making a Metroidvania, why wouldn't I just go play the greatest Metroidvania, right? Whatever that is to you. Super Metroid, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Hollow Knight, Rogue Legacy, Ori and the Blind Forest, whatever. Why would I play your Metroidvania over this other Metroidvania? Because you are just kind of stacking. And so you can kind of get out of that line, right? With the ATM, let's say everybody's making a Metroidvania. If yours is different enough, like you want to be in the Metroidvania line, but if yours has something special that the others don't, maybe it's a really unique art style, like, you know, the Cuphead, the hose arms, that really expensive, I don't recommend it, art style, or some new mechanic you introduce, like tower defense, or I guess RPG elements are pretty common, but something new you introduce to the game, you can kind of break out of that line and jump to the head of the line, which is super valuable, especially for us indies. And again, back to my book. I know I've been talking about it a lot, but you should really go pick up a copy. This book, I didn't even know about this when I wrote the book. I just wanted to spend my time creating a little something that wasn't games, because the bulk of the time I was writing this book, I had a day job making games. And like, you might have heard the term of spoons, where you have like different currencies you can spend. And my game dev spoons were spent. Like Monday through Friday, I was working 8-10 hours, you know. I didn't really have a lot of energy at the end of the day or the weekends to go work on games, really, but I still had creative juices. And I was like, I just had this book bubbling up, you know? I mean, what I didn't realize, though, is that the book was adhering to the not stacking philosophy, because the thing is like, not a lot of people make books. A lot of people write blogs. A lot of people have YouTube channels. I feel like almost every indie game dev these days has either a podcast or a YouTube channel and or a blog, and almost certainly like a Twitter feed, or they're on Blue Sky or Mastodon. They do a good job of checking all the boxes that you'd expect, and I do all those things too. almost nobody writes a book. And even if they do, a lot of times they're ebooks. I see a fair amount of ebooks or courses or those kinds of things. But a physical book was kind of not stacking, you know? I'm not going to tell you my book's the most special thing in the world, but I will tell you it feels like a breath of fresh air sometimes because you hold it in your hands, which is a pretty rare thing in the indie game world where the vast majority of games are digital. It's pretty cheap, it's dense, it's packed with information. And if everybody else is doing YouTube devlogs, then you're kind of stacking, you're getting in line, right? But it takes more work to make a physical book than it does to make a blog or to make an ebook even. And so far fewer people are going to do that. And so by making a physical book, you are not stacking. You're getting out of that long ATM line and you're getting in the shorter line, maybe even jumping up to the front. And I didn't really intend to do that. That wasn't like my mission objective with making the book, but that's one of the things that having made the book did for me was it took a product that I'm working on and like my game, and Witchmore is another example. It's getting in line. There's lots of indie games that are kind of survivor style or even sandbox or whatever I end up making with that game. My other game, Pixel Washer, is sort of almost intending to get in line, but like a shorter line where it's a game about washing pixels. Check it out. I got a little piggy. Isn't he cute? Anyway. And there are washing simulators out there. For example, Power Wash Simulator was published by Square Enix. It's made like $15 million on Steam alone. And I don't even think I would have made the game if there wasn't already like a paved road for like, hey, people are entertained by something as basic as just washing stuff. It's just very satisfying. But there's not a lot of them. It's not like roguelikes or Metroidvanias or side-scrolling platformers where they're kind of a dime a dozen. There's a million of them. There's like 3, you know what I mean? And so it's a shorter line with Pixel Washer. So that's one of the reasons that I think my book has been as, you know, mildly successful as it has been, is that it kind of jumped up ahead by adhering to the no stacking philosophy, even if I didn't know I was doing that. The last example I'll give here is something I'm going to talk a lot more about in the future, which is Nintendo, which is one of my favorite companies. Can you see this Nintendo logo back there? Yeah, I ganked that. I used to work at Toys R Us, and when they were shutting down the electronics area or just redoing the merchandising, just yoink, mine now. But Nintendo's a really interesting company because they use a strategy called the Blue Ocean strategy. And so picture you're a shark and you're hungry for a meal. You're in the ocean. You can go anywhere in the world, like 70% of the planet's covered in water. You can go wherever you want. And the obvious place to go is like, where are the fish? And so you go to what's known as the Red Ocean. And the Red Ocean it's red because it's full of the blood of fish. The waters have been chummed. And there's excitement there. There's obviously food to eat there. But the reason it's red is because the other sharks are there too. And so a good example is something like a first-person shooter. Call of Duty, the third-person sort of like arena games right now, first or third-person, whatever, like PlayerUnknown Battleground or Fortnite. Those are red waters. So if you make a game in that genre, you know there's an audience there, but you also know the competition is pretty fierce. Nintendo is known for having a blue ocean strategy. So they go out into the open waters where there aren't a lot of other sharks already feeding, which basically means there's not a lot of competition, right? And they've been doing this their entire, I want to say careers, the whole lifetime of Nintendo. They've been doing this. They try lots of experimental things like the Virtua Boy, remember the Power Glove? They try to find areas where there isn't a lot of competition. They try to innovate. One of their most successful versions of this was the Game Boy, where there wasn't really a handheld at the time, and they released the Game Boy, and I need to go look up the sales numbers, but I'm pretty sure that thing outpaced even the NES after a few years. It had really long legs because there wasn't a lot of competition. And probably Nintendo's best example of the Blue Ocean strategy would be the original Wii, which was the console they made that was kind of a weaker console at that time, around that generation. And it had the Wiimotes, which were motion detecting, right? And so they had games like Wii Sports, Wii Bowling, stuff like that. And with their Blue Ocean strategy, they hit that sweet spot of like, they would say their target demographic is between ages 9 and 90. Like anyone can play it really, right? And the Wii has been one of Nintendo's hugest hits, a big monster of a hit. And so I'll talk more about Nintendo's Blue Ocean strategy on this show in the future, so be sure to subscribe if you want to hear more about that. But I just kind of wanted to touch on that, where I feel like it fits into the box of the no stacking philosophy, where stacking, getting into the long ATM line, that would be going into the Red Ocean, right? Where there's lots of competition, there's lots of other sharks, and there's meals there to eat, but you have to fight the other sharks to get to it. And then the blue ocean strategy is the wide open ocean waters, and it's the no ATM line, where you can skip ahead and you can maybe find your own brand new market where there's plenty of fish for you to eat and no one else is there to get in your way. So that's sort of my no stacking philosophy. I hope that makes sense and is helpful. I'm pretty sure that you might be able to apply it to other areas of your life and maybe even your game development or other creative endeavors. Lastly, I want to talk about goals. Goals are really hard. I didn't do a good job. You may have heard my 2-year indie post-mortem for Valadria. I carved out 2 years where I could kind of focus on my own creative endeavors. And really, I was just kind of wanting to experiment and be a weirdo, working on whatever game I wanted, having my little newsletter, making my little videos, doing my podcast. But what I didn't have for sure were enough set goals I wanted to reach. And there's this system called the SMART system that can help you create good goals. So SMART is an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. SMART. So a specific goal would be something like, for me, for the longest time, this goes way back to my time working at my first indie game studio, Lost Decade Games. I wanted to have $1,000 per month of passive revenue. So what that means is I've got a product or several products or games or books or whatever out there that even if I do nothing, they're going to make $1,000 per month on average throughout the year, whatever. Measurable is something that you can know for sure if you hit or not. So, sometimes your goal will be like make games or, lose weight. Those are good goals, but they're not measurable. Now, a measurable goal would be make a game or make a game a month or make a game for this game jam or make a game in time for the next Steam Next Fest. Those kinds of things. Participate in the next Steam Next Fest. Those are all measurable goals. You can go look at the calendar and see if you hit it or not. Lose weight is a common one. I want to lose weight. My resting body weight's about 160 and I've usually been hovering around 180, especially like around pandemic times where you're just like stress eating and just eating for fun or whatever. I also cook. I know how to make cookies and brownies. It's very dangerous. I don't recommend it. So if lose weight's your goal, that's not measurable. But if my goal is hit 160, so I need to lose 10 more pounds to hit that, that's measurable. I can go and weigh myself and see if I've hit that or not. Achievable is a really important goal to think about, especially when making games. So if my goal was to hit 140 in weight, that's not really achievable. I think it might be possible for me to lose that much weight, but I would need to lose some muscle too, and it might be dangerous for me to be that like emaciated, right? And you'll see this a lot with indie game devs especially, is they'll be like, hey, I want to start making games, and how do I get started? And that's how people get to, here comes again, folks, that's how people get to my book, How to Make a Video Game All by Yourself. And I had this problem. That's the name of my company, Valadria, is actually the name of one of my failed attempts at making an MMORPG, right? I wanted to make something like World of Warcraft, but in a 2D world with like a whole login system, and it's massively multiplayer online, hundreds of items, and you can get to level 100 and fight 10 bosses in 50 different realms. Like, what a mess. Not achievable. And that's what the advice that you'll see more veteran game devs give to younger game devs or less experienced game devs is don't make your magnum opus yet. Work your way up to it. Make small, achievable games. Like almost anybody can make tic-tac-toe. Almost anybody could make Tetris or chess, and you could put your own spin on it and make your own game. Those are achievable, right? But if you want to make World of Warcraft or if you want to make Skyrim, that's not really achievable. Next is relevant, which is probably harder than going down the SMART, SMAR. Because like for me, when I was making my book, it kind of felt irrelevant a bit, right? Like I'm a game developer. I want to make games, especially my own indie games is my full-time thing. And so making a book didn't really feel relevant. But if when looking at my goal for making $1,000 per month passively, then it does become relevant. So I think that might be the hardest, the R, the relevant, that might be the hardest one to kind of apply to your goals. And the last one is timed or time bound. And so it's good to be like, I want to lose 20 pounds, but it's better to be like, I want to lose 20 pounds in 3 months or 6 months or whatever that looks like. And so that's one thing I really like about using game jams and maybe Steam events to put on the calendar is they are very much timed. If you're like, I want to make my first game this year, that's good, but you have to not just be like, within a year. You can't just kind of gloss over it, right? You have to be like, put a date on the calendar. Like December 31st is the date. And if I launch a game by then, I have hit that timed goal. And if I haven't, then I haven't, right? And for me, with my passive revenue of $1,000 per month, I never did time that. So my next goal, when looking at the SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timed, I want to get to $10,000 per month of passive revenue. Basically, I want to 10x because my book is making about $1,000 per month, especially if you round it out. Like the book, I don't know, it sells at least 2 or 3 copies every single day. Some days, if I get lucky, if someone posts a review of the game, or if I have a tweet that kind of pops off or something, I can get up to dozens of sales, which is great. And if I was hitting that every day, it might start to pay my bills, But around Christmas time, especially starting like October, the sales start to go up a lot. And then right up until once the book could no longer be shipped in time to be a valid Christmas gift, my sales drop off a cliff, right? But if you add up the money that it makes around Christmas time, it definitely hits that, rounded out per year. It makes that $1,000 per month of passive revenue, which I'm really grateful for. And $1,000 per month helps out. Every little bit for someone like me really helps out. If you buy my book, if you rate it 5 stars, that's a huge help to me. But I live in California. I live in an expensive place. $1,000 per month is I can't survive on that. That's $12K per year. That's less than minimum wage. I don't know if anybody can survive on that. But getting up to $10K per month, then we're looking at $120,000 per year, which is kind of like a junior developer's salary in California. And we're starting to talk about paying the bills at that point. That would pay my mortgage. That would pay for trips to Costco, And so how do I get there is the thing, right? If I knew how to write a book that was 10 times better than how to make a video game all by yourself and just sell 10 times as well, I would do that. I don't know how to do that. If I knew how to explode my YouTube channel to where the video, like my videos make no money. I'm not even monetized yet. I have a course for sale called Making Big Indie Games. I don't really know how to market it. I don't know how to sell it. But I'll tell you what I do know how to do. I do know how to make games. And so I think that's going to help. I got to get some games out. I have to finally release some games under the Valadria banner. I'm working on Witchmore. I'm working on Pixel Washer. But for one reason or 20 reasons, I haven't actually published either of them. But getting them out will help me reach that goal of hitting $10,000 per month of passive revenue. But kind of a more stable way to do it is to make 10 books. I've made a book already. It took 2 years of writing the book only on Sundays for 3-hour chunks. And so I think if I compressed that, if I spent some amount of time on the book every day on the next book, I think I could get another book out by the end of the year. And so what I can do is I can look at the calendar and I can say, if I were to get out one new book at the quality level of how to make a video game all by yourself every year, in theory, each one of those books could hit that sweet spot where it's making somewhere around $1,000 of passive revenue per month. And after 10 years, I know that's a long time, but one book per year, after 10 years, I could see how I could hit that $10,000 of passive revenue per month. So I'm not saying for sure that that's my goal, but I think that's something that I know that I can do. I've already got ideas for about 5 books, if you can believe it. And they take a long time to write. I take a lot of care to write them very carefully. I pay attention to things like how the 2 pages go together, I like this form factor of the 6x6. I like the paperback. The paperback sells between 5 and 10 times better than the ebook for me anyway. It's for sale on Itch and Gumroad, and you can buy it on Kindle. Kindle sells pretty well, but the paperback is really where it's at. And so what I want to do is I want to release 9 more books that are paperback and for sale on Amazon. Quite a goal. But I don't think I'm going to have to hit that 10 book mark over the next 10 years because like Pixel Washer is coming out. If not this year, then the next. So, put me down on the calendar. 2024, 2025, Pixel Washer's coming out. It's not going to make $0. I really doubt it'll make, the first week, then the first month, you get some good solid sales, but then if you get that long tail, it kind of drops off. I have no idea what to expect yet. My wish lists are currently very low. But if I keep updating the game, I keep adding new pixel art to wash to it, I could see how, especially when participating in Steam sales, Steam events, marking the game off 25% for this, like a winter sale or a summer sale, looking at the whole year and averaging out what it's making per month. I think within the next year or two, when I launch Pixel Washer, I could see that maybe it could I could see how it could be the equivalent of a book. And so maybe I only have to write 8 books, 2 games and 8 books. Maybe that would do it. So anyways, I think it's important to have goals and consider the SMART system. There's a million different processes you could use to write your own goals. But if you make it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed, it can really help you actually achieve those goals. And so that's what I'm going to try to do for the long term. Wish me luck. So those are the 3 topics we covered. GDC 2024. Look in the future for me making more content about how the trip went. If you're going to be at GDC, please do reach out. You can email me, matt@veladria.com, or DM me on Twitter or at me on Twitter at Richtaur, Richtaur. No stacking is a philosophy that I kind of build into my daily life, which is don't get in the long line. Try to find a way to skip ahead in everything that you do. And then we talked about setting goals just a second ago. Now for some upkeep stuff. I am still coaching. If you're interested in that, the window is starting to close as I am moving towards getting a contract or a job. I just had a call yesterday that went really well, and I always so we talk for an hour, sometimes slightly more if it makes sense on the calendar. I consider myself to be a fountain of information because I have a wide spectrum of knowledge, and as you can probably tell, I'm very enthusiastic and very encouraging. And I always follow up the calls with a long email where I give my advice. Like, I take notes throughout our call. I compile that into a nice email with bulleted list, and I link to a bunch of stuff. I almost always link to GDC talks, articles I've written, or articles other people have written. I often will recommend games to play that are kind of in the wheelhouse of the game you're working on, or the product you're working on. That's what's been interesting too with the coaching/consulting, which if you go to veladria.com/coaching. Anyway, I'll put a link in the show notes. But I've had friends sign up. I've had developers I've never met sign up who are working on an indie game. I've had folks sign up who are working on kind of a more enterprise product, which is very interesting. I've had people sign up who aren't even working on games, kind of just more creative projects. It's all been very interesting. So that's still open for a little bit. If you are interested, you can sign up at veladria.com. All right, well, I think that's it. I want to thank you for watching or listening. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Veladria or my podcasts on Spotify and iTunes and everywhere else you can find it. Make the Game with Matt Hackett. Good luck with your indie game or other project. Now it's time for you to go make the game.